There is something most people never understand about rejection. When someone rejects you, especially an avoidant person, your first instinct is often to fight for the connection. You want answers. You want closure. You want them to see your value. You want them to recognize what they are walking away from. And because the pain feels so intense, you start believing that if you just say the right words, send the right message, explain your feelings one more time, somehow everything will change. But here's what you must understand. The moment you begin chasing someone who has already stepped away, you hand over the most valuable thing you possess, your power. An avoidant person often struggles with emotional vulnerability. When intimacy becomes deep, they may retreat. When feelings become intense, they may create distance. Their reaction is not always about you. Often, it is about the battle happening inside them. And this is why the response they secretly expect from most people is pursuit. They expect you to call again. They expect you to text again. They expect you to convince them. They expect you to prove your worth. But there is one thing they rarely expect, and that one thing changes everything. Your growth, your silence filled with purpose, your decision to move forward, not from anger, not from revenge, not from bitterness, but from self-respect. Think about it. When someone rejects you and you spend months trying to change their mind, your life becomes centered around their decision. But when someone rejects you and you decide to build your future, your life becomes centered around your purpose. That is a completely different energy. One energy says, please choose me. The other says, I choose myself. And the second energy is powerful beyond measure. Because confidence is not forcing someone to stay. Confidence is knowing your value even when someone leaves. Strength is not convincing people of your worth. Strength is recognizing your worth without their validation. Far too many people waste years waiting for someone else's approval. They postpone their happiness. They postpone their dreams. They postpone their healing. And they keep staring at a closed door while life is opening 10 new doors behind them. Life was never designed for you to beg for what is meant to flow naturally. You were created for more than that. You were created to grow, to evolve, to learn, to become stronger through adversity. Every challenge enters your life carrying a lesson. Every rejection carries a hidden gift. Every setback contains the seed of transformation. The question is not whether rejection hurts. Of course it hurts. The question is what you will do with that pain. Will you allow it to break you, or will you allow it to build you? Because pain can become fuel. Pain can become wisdom. Pain can become purpose. The greatest transformations often begin with the greatest disappointments. Many people look back at the moment their heart was broken and realize it was also the moment their life changed forever. It forced them to grow. It forced them to discover strengths they never knew existed. It forced them to stop settling. It forced them to become who they were meant to be. And that's what most avoidants secretly wish they could see after rejecting you. Not your suffering. Not your desperation. Not your endless pursuit. They wish they could see someone who continued rising. Someone who chose healing over chasing. Someone who chose growth over obsession. Someone who transformed pain into power. Because deep down, growth commands respect. When you continue building your life, something remarkable happens. Your focus changes. Your energy changes. Your standards change. Your identity changes. You stop asking, why didn't they choose me? And you start asking, am I becoming the person I was born to be? That question changes everything. Because your destiny is bigger than one person's decision. Your purpose is greater than one relationship. Your future is too valuable to be held hostage by rejection. The moment you truly understand this, freedom begins. You realize that your value was never determined by someone else's ability to recognize it. A diamond remains valuable even when someone mistakes it for a stone. Your worth does not decrease because someone failed to see it. Your purpose does not disappear because someone walked away. Your future does not end because one chapter closed. And when you embrace that truth, you become unstoppable. You stop operating from fear. You stop living for approval. You stop shrinking yourself to fit inside someone else's comfort zone. Instead, you expand. You grow. You rise. You become stronger, wiser, and more grounded than ever before. And perhaps one day, that avoidant person will look back. Perhaps they will remember you. Perhaps they will wonder what happened. Perhaps they will realize what they lost. But by then, something extraordinary will have occurred. That will no longer be the most important question in your life, because your focus will no longer be on who left. Your focus will be on who you became, and that is the greatest victory of all. The most powerful response to rejection is not revenge. It is not proving someone wrong. It is not making someone regret their decision. The most powerful response is becoming the highest version of yourself. Walking forward with faith, living with purpose, growing with intention, and trusting that every closed door is guiding you toward a greater destination. Because the moment you stop chasing what left, you create space for what truly belongs in your life. And that is where your power begins. That is where your transformation begins. That is where your new life begins. When an avoidant person rejects you, the natural reaction is often to hold on tighter. Your emotions tell you to fight for the connection. Your mind starts replaying conversations, searching for mistakes, wondering what you could have done differently. You feel an overwhelming urge to explain yourself one more time, send one more message, or somehow convince them that the relationship is worth saving. But this is the exact moment when respecting their decision becomes one of the most powerful actions you can take. Respecting their decision does not mean you agree with it. It does not mean you stop caring about them overnight. It does not mean the pain suddenly disappears. What it means is that you accept reality as it is, instead of exhausting yourself trying to force a different outcome. You recognize that every healthy relationship requires two willing participants, and no amount of effort can create genuine commitment in someone who has chosen to step away. Avoidant individuals often struggle with emotional closeness. When relationships become serious, they may feel overwhelmed by vulnerability and responsibility. In many cases, they expect resistance when they pull away. They expect emotional arguments, repeated attempts at contact, and constant pressure to reconsider. Because of this expectation, chasing them often reinforces the very dynamic that caused them to retreat in the first place. The moment you respect their choice and stop chasing, something important happens. You break the pattern. Instead of reacting from fear, you respond from self-respect. You communicate, without saying a word, that your value does not depend on their acceptance. You demonstrate emotional maturity by accepting what you cannot control and focusing on what you can. Many people confuse self-respect with pride. They think respecting a rejection means acting cold, pretending not to care, or trying to punish the other person with silence. True self-respect is different. It is calm, it is grounded. It does not seek revenge or validation. It simply acknowledges that if someone has made a decision, constantly trying to change their mind is unlikely to create the healthy connection you desire. When you continue pursuing someone after they have clearly rejected you, you unintentionally place them in a position of power over your emotions. Your happiness becomes dependent on their response. Every message becomes a source of hope or disappointment. Every delay in communication feels significant. Your emotional state begins revolving around someone who has already communicated their vengeance. Respecting their decision allows you to reclaim that power. Instead of spending your energy analyzing their behavior, you begin investing that energy in yourself. Instead of waiting for them to choose you, you start choosing yourself. This shift may seem simple, but it changes everything. It transforms you from someone seeking approval into someone building a life that does not require external validation. There is also something deeply attractive about emotional stability. When you accept rejection with grace, you show strength that many people rarely encounter. You prove that your identity is not dependent on one relationship. You show that while you may be hurt, you are still capable of moving forward with dignity. This kind of confidence cannot be faked. It comes from knowing that your worth remains intact regardless of another person's decision. Respecting their decision also creates clarity. Constant pursuit often keeps both people trapped in confusion. One person continues hoping, while the other continues withdrawing. By accepting the situation as it stands, you allow reality to reveal itself. If someone truly wants to reconnect in the future, they know how to reach you. If they do not, you have already begun moving toward a healthier and more fulfilling path. The hardest part is often resisting the urge to seek immediate relief from the pain. Reaching out may provide temporary comfort, but it rarely creates lasting peace. Real healing begins when you stop trying to control the outcome and start trusting yourself. Enough to move forward even without the answers you wanted. One of the most transformative things you can do after being rejected by an avoidant person is to redirect your focus toward your own growth. This is not about pretending the rejection did not hurt. It is not about distracting yourself from your emotions or burying your pain beneath endless activity. Real growth begins when you acknowledge the disappointment, learn from it, and then make a conscious decision to invest your energy into becoming a stronger version of yourself. Many people spend months, sometimes years, trying to understand why someone left. They analyze every conversation, every text message, every interaction. They search for hidden meanings and unanswered questions. While reflection can be healthy, obsession keeps you trapped in the past. The more you focus on what another person is thinking, the less attention you give to your own life. Growth begins the moment you stop asking, "Why did they reject me?" and start asking, "What can I become because of this experience?" Every difficult experience carries the potential for transformation. Rejection has a unique way of revealing parts of ourselves that we may have ignored. It exposes insecurities, fears, and emotional wounds that were hidden beneath the surface. While this process can be uncomfortable, it also creates an opportunity. Instead of viewing rejection as proof that you are not enough, you can view it as an invitation to grow into someone stronger, wiser, and more emotionally resilient. Avoidant individuals often expect people to remain emotionally attached long after the relationship ends. They may expect endless attempts at communication, emotional reactions, or efforts to regain their attention. What they rarely expect is someone who takes that energy and uses it to transform their own life. Personal growth changes the entire dynamic because it shifts your focus away from seeking validation and toward creating fulfillment from within. This growth can take many forms. It may mean improving your physical health, developing new skills, pursuing career goals, strengthening your faith, or building deeper relationships with family and friends. The specific path is less important than the commitment to moving forward. Every hour spent improving yourself is an hour invested in a future that does not depend on someone else's approval. One of the greatest mistakes people make after rejection is believing that their value has somehow decreased. They start measuring their worth through the lens of another person's decision. But another person's inability to choose you does not define your potential. It does not determine your future. It does not erase your strengths, your talents, or your purpose. Growth reminds you of who you are independent of anyone else's opinion. As you begin focusing on your development, something powerful starts to happen. Your confidence becomes rooted in achievement rather than validation. Instead of feeling valuable because someone wants you, you feel valuable because you know yourself. You recognize your capabilities. You trust your ability to overcome challenges. You become less dependent on external approval because your sense of worth comes from within. Growth also changes your perspective. In the beginning, rejection may feel like the end of something important, but as you evolve, you often realize it was the beginning of something greater. The pain that once seemed unbearable becomes a source of wisdom. The disappointment that once consumed your thoughts becomes part of your story rather than the center of it. You begin to understand that some experiences enter your life not to destroy you but to develop you. There is a quiet power in becoming better without making announcements about it. You do not need to prove your growth to the person who rejected you. You do not need to post every achievement or seek recognition for every step forward. True growth is personal. It happens in the daily decisions nobody sees, the discipline to keep going, the courage to face your fears, and the commitment to keep improving even when nobody is watching. The most remarkable transformation occurs when your happiness is no longer connected to whether someone comes back. At that point, your growth becomes genuine. You are no longer improving yourself to gain someone's attention. You are improving yourself because you recognize your own value and refuse to let a painful experience define the rest of your life. Maintaining your dignity and self-respect after rejection is one of the most difficult challenges a person can face. When emotions are running high, it is easy to react impulsively. You may feel the urge to plead for another chance, demand explanations, or repeatedly reach out in hopes of changing the outcome. These reactions are understandable because rejection can trigger deep feelings of loss, fear, and insecurity. However, the way you respond during these moments often determines whether you emerge stronger or become trapped in emotional suffering. Self-respect begins with understanding that your worth is not determined by another person's facts. When someone rejects you, it can feel personal. You may start questioning your appearance, your personality, your value, or your ability to be loved. Yet the truth is that another person's choice reflects their own circumstances, preferences, fears, and limitations. It does not define your identity. The moment you allow someone else's decision to become the measure of your worth, you give away control over how you see yourself. Avoidant individuals often struggle with emotional intimacy and vulnerability. When they decide to pull away, they may expect intense reactions. They may anticipate emotional pressure, repeated attempts at contact, or efforts to convince them to stay. In many situations, they are prepared for resistance. What they often do not expect is calm acceptance combined with unwavering self-respect. This kind of response stands out because it demonstrates emotional strength rather than emotional dependence. Maintaining dignity does not mean suppressing your feelings. It does not require pretending that you are unaffected. In fact, true dignity allows room for pain. You can be hurt without losing control of your actions. You can feel sadness without abandoning your standards. You can experience disappointment without sacrificing your self-worth. The goal is not to eliminate emotion, but to prevent emotion from dictating every decision you make. One of the clearest signs of self-respect is refusing to chase someone who has clearly communicated their desire to leave. Many people believe persistence is a sign of love, but there is a difference between healthy effort and self-abandonment. When someone repeatedly shows that they are unwilling to invest in the relationship, continuing to pursue them often comes at the expense of your own emotional well-being. Respecting yourself means recognizing when your energy is no longer being valued and choosing not to beg for what should be given freely. Dignity is also reflected in the way you speak about the situation. It can be tempting to criticize the person who rejected you, spread negativity, or seek revenge through words and actions. While these responses may provide temporary satisfaction, they rarely bring lasting peace. People who maintain self-respect understand that their character is more important than winning a momentary emotional battle. They refuse to allow disappointment to transform them into someone they do not want to become. Another important aspect of dignity is emotional restraint. In moments of heartbreak, many people feel compelled to explain themselves repeatedly. They want the other person to understand their pain, recognize their value, or admit they made a mistake. While honest communication has its place, constantly seeking validation from someone who has already chosen to leave often deepens the wound. Self-respect means knowing when you have said enough and trusting that your value does not require endless justification. As time passes, maintaining dignity becomes increasingly powerful because it reinforces a healthy relationship with yourself. Every time you choose self-respect over desperation, you strengthen your confidence. Every time you honor your boundaries, you build trust in your own judgment. Every time you walk away from a situation that no longer serves you, you remind yourself that your peace is worth protecting. The strongest people are not those who never experience rejection. They are the ones who experience it, feel its impact, and still refuse to compromise their values. They understand that while they cannot control another person's choices, they can control how they respond. By holding on to their dignity, they preserve something far more valuable than a counter relationship. They preserve their sense of self. Creating space instead of pressure is one of the most powerful responses you can choose after being rejected by an avoidant person. Yet it is also one of the most difficult. When someone you care about pulls away, your natural instinct is often to move closer. You want to fix the problem, clear up misunderstandings, and restore the connection. The fear of losing them can become so overwhelming that every part of you wants to hold on tighter. Unfortunately, this reaction often produces the opposite result of what you hope for. Avoidant individuals tend to value independence and emotional distance, especially when they feel overwhelmed. When they experience pressure, whether intentional or not, they often respond by creating even more distance. Repeated messages, constant attempts to talk, emotional demands, or efforts to force clarity can make them feel trapped rather than understood. The more pressure they feel, the stronger their desire to retreat may become. This is why creating space is not about giving up. It is about understanding the dynamic and responding wisely rather than emotionally. Space allows both people to step out of the cycle of pursuit and withdrawal. Instead of reacting to every emotion in the moment, each person has the opportunity to process their thoughts without feeling pushed or controlled. Many people fear space because they assume it means losing the relationship forever. They believe that if they stop reaching out, the connection will disappear. But genuine relationships cannot be sustained through pressure. If a connection only survives because one person is constantly chasing and convincing the other to stay, the foundation is already unstable. Space reveals what is real. It allows people to make choices freely, rather than out of guilt, obligation, or emotional exhaustion. Creating space also benefits you. When rejection occurs, emotions can cloud your judgment. You may focus entirely on the other person's actions while neglecting your own needs. Distance provides an opportunity to regain perspective. It allows you to step back from the emotional intensity and evaluate the situation more objectively. Questions that once seemed impossible to answer often become clearer when you are no longer caught in the middle of constant emotional turmoil. Space gives you room to reconnect with yourself. During relationships, especially emotionally intense ones, people sometimes lose touch with their own goals, interests, and priorities. Their attention becomes centered on maintaining the connection. After rejection, creating space allows you to redirect that energy inward. You can focus on your growth, your health, your purpose, and the areas of your life that deserve attention. There is also something powerful about demonstrating that you can respect another person's choice. Boundaries. When someone chooses distance, honoring that choice shows emotional maturity. It communicates that you value both their autonomy and your own self-respect. Rather than trying to control their decisions, you allow them the freedom to experience the consequences of those decisions on their own terms. For avoidant individuals, space often creates an environment where reflection becomes possible. When pressure is removed, they are no longer focused on escaping demands or defending their decision. They have the opportunity to think, feel, and evaluate without external influence. This does not guarantee they will return, nor should creating space be viewed as a strategy to make someone come back. The purpose is not manipulation. The purpose is to allow reality to unfold naturally. One of the greatest advantages of space is that it helps break emotional dependency. When you stop monitoring their every move, waiting for every message, or searching for signs of interest, you begin reclaiming your emotional freedom. Your mood becomes less dependent on their behavior. Your sense of peace becomes less vulnerable to their choices. You start building a life that feels meaningful regardless of what they decide. Over time, space creates clarity that pressure never can. It reveals whether the connection was based on genuine compatibility or emotional attachment. It shows whether both people are willing to invest in the relationship voluntarily. Most importantly, it gives you the opportunity to heal, grow, and move forward without being trapped in a cycle of constant pursuit and disappointment. Perhaps the most important transformation that can happen after being rejected by an avoidant person is becoming someone who no longer needs their approval. This does not mean becoming cold, bitter, or indifferent. It does not mean pretending you never cared. Instead, it means reaching a place where your sense of worth, happiness, and identity are no longer dependent on whether another person chooses you. Many people spend a large portion of their lives seeking approval. They want to be accepted, admired, desired, and valued. There is nothing unusual about this because human beings naturally crave connection. The problem begins when approval becomes a requirement for self-worth. When that happens, rejection feels devastating because it attacks more than the relationship. It attacks the way you see yourself. After an avoidant person rejects you, it is easy to fall into the trap of believing that their opinion carries extraordinary importance. You may begin thinking that if they could just see your value, everything would be different. You may imagine that their validation would finally give you peace. As a result, your emotional energy becomes focused on earning recognition from someone who has already chosen distance. The danger of this mindset is that it places your happiness in someone else's hands. Every action they take gains enormous significance. If they contact you, you feel hopeful. If they remain silent, you feel discouraged. If they show interest, you feel valuable. If they pull away again, you question yourself. Your emotional state becomes tied to factors completely outside your control. True freedom begins when you realize that no one else's approval can permanently solve your insecurities. Even if the avoidant person returned tomorrow and declared their love, any confidence built solely on their validation would remain fragile. The moment circumstances changed, the fear would return. Lasting confidence must come from within. It must be based on your understanding of your own worth rather than someone else's opinion of it. Becoming someone who no longer needs their approval starts with recognizing your intrinsic value. Your worth is not earned through another person's acceptance. It is not created by their attention, affection, or commitment. Your value exists independently of their choices. Whether they stay or leave, whether they understand you or misunderstand you, whether they choose you or reject you, your worth remains unchanged. This realization changes the way you approach relationships. Instead of asking, how can I make them want me? You begin asking, is this relationship healthy, balanced, and aligned with my values? The focus shifts from proving yourself to evaluating compatibility. You stop seeing yourself as a candidate seeking approval and start seeing yourself as an equal participant making thoughtful choices. One of the most empowering aspects of this transformation is that it restores your personal authority. You stop allowing rejection to define your future. You stop measuring your progress by whether someone notices your growth. You stop treating another person's attention as a reward and their absence as a punishment. Instead, you begin living according to your own standards and goals. As your confidence grows, something remarkable happens. You become less reactive. Situations that once consumed your thoughts lose their power over you. You no longer feel compelled to chase, convince, or prove. You understand that people are free to make their own choices, and you are free to continue building your life regardless of those choices. This mindset also creates healthier relationships in the future. When you do not need approval, you can love without desperation. You can connect without becoming emotionally dependent. You can care deeply while still maintaining your sense of self. Relationships become partnerships rather than sources of validation. Over time, you begin to understand that the goal was never to make the avoidant person recognize your worth. The goal was to recognize it yourself. Once you truly see your own value, you stop seeking permission to feel worthy. You stop waiting for someone else's approval to move forward. You start living with confidence that comes from knowing exactly who you are, regardless of who chooses to stay or leave. Thank you for spending this time with me and investing in your own growth, healing, and self-discovery. Remember, your value is not determined by who leaves, but by the strength, purpose, and confidence you build within yourself. Until next time, keep moving forward, keep choosing yourself, and keep becoming the person you were meant to be. Goodbye, and may your journey be filled with growth, peace, and endless possibilities. So, what is the one thing every avoidant secretly wishes you'd do after they reject you? Not chase them, not beg for another chance, not spend months trying to prove your worth. What they often don't expect is for you to respect their decision, focus on your growth, maintain your dignity, create space, and become someone who no longer needs their approval to feel valuable. Because when you choose growth over chasing, you reclaim your power. When you choose self-respect over desperation, you reclaim your identity. When you choose purpose over pain, you transform your future. The greatest response to rejection is not making someone regret losing you. The greatest response is becoming the version of yourself that no longer needs anyone's. The permission to thrive. Remember, every setback carries a lesson. Every disappointment carries an opportunity. Every closed door has the potential to lead you toward a greater destination if you have the courage to keep moving forward. Do not allow one person's decision to define your life. Do not allow temporary pain to make you forget your permanent value. Keep growing. Keep learning. Keep building. Keep becoming. One day, you'll look back at the rejection that once broke your heart and realize it was the very experience that revealed your strength, deepened your wisdom, and guided you toward the life you were meant to live. Thank you for being here and sharing this journey of growth, healing, and self-discovery. Your time, attention, and commitment to becoming your best self are deeply appreciated. Until next time, keep believing in your value, keep walking in your purpose, and keep moving forward with confidence. Take care of yourself, stay strong, and go rum.